The courtroom was packed. Everyone expected a routine hearing, but no one was ready for what happened next. Judge Harrison smirked from the bench, his words dripping with arrogance as he insulted Pam Bondi in front of everyone. The room fell silent. Shocked murmurs spread, but Pam didn't back down. She stood tall, eyes locked on the judge, and what happened next changed everything. Within minutes, the powerful judge who thought he controlled the law was in handcuffs. But that was just the beginning. The real fight was about to start, and the truth was far more dangerous than anyone expected. Before we start the story, comment below where in the world you're watching from. And if you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a new one. The courtroom was tense. The air felt thick with anticipation as Judge Harrison leaned forward, adjusting his glasses. Pam Bondi stood tall, her expression unwavering. She had handled countless cases before, but something about this moment felt different. "You expect me to take this argument seriously?" Judge Harrison scoffed, shaking his head. His voice dripped with sarcasm. "Ms. Bondi, I've heard better arguments from first-year law students." Murmurs spread across the courtroom. Some chuckled, others exchanged nervous glances. Pam narrowed her eyes, gripping the edge of the podium. "Your Honor," she said firmly, her voice steady, "I came here to present facts, not to be ridiculed." Judge Harrison smirked. "Well, maybe next time bring an argument that isn't a complete joke." The room fell silent. Pam inhaled sharply, but she refused to let the insult shake her. Instead, she straightened her posture and met the judge's gaze with unwavering confidence. Then something unexpected happened. Pam Bondi didn't flinch. She had dealt with tough judges before, but this was beyond unprofessional. It was personal. She took a deep breath. "With all due respect, Your Honor, I am here to uphold the law, not to entertain insults." Judge Harrison chuckled, shaking his head. "Oh, is that so? Or maybe if you actually had a case worth listening to, I wouldn't be so bored." The courtroom gasped. Even the opposing counsel looked surprised. This was going too far. Pam turned to the bailiff. "Is this being recorded?" The bailiff hesitated before nodding. "Good," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Because I'd like to file a formal complaint against Judge Harrison for misconduct." Judge Harrison's smirk disappeared. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," Pam said, standing her ground. "Judicial bias, unprofessional behavior, and public ridicule of a legal representative in open court. That's grounds for an investigation." The murmurs grew louder. People whispered among themselves. Even the court clerk seemed unsure of what to do next. Judge Harrison's face turned red. "You're out of line, Ms. Bondi," he barked. "No, Your Honor," she said, holding his gaze. "You are." For the first time, the judge seemed nervous. He glanced toward the bailiff, then at the gallery, where reporters had already begun scribbling notes. Then suddenly, the doors to the courtroom swung open. A group of officials walked in, their expressions stern. Leading them was a senior judicial investigator, Mark Reynolds, a man known for taking misconduct seriously. Judge Harrison's face paled. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded. Mark ignored the judge and turned to Pam Bondi. "Ms. Bondi, we received your complaint," he said. "We've also reviewed past footage of this courtroom. It seems this isn't the first time Judge Harrison has acted inappropriately." The room went dead silent. Pam nodded, arms crossed. "And now the whole world knows," she said. Judge Harrison scoffed. "This is ridiculous. I'm the judge here. You can't just walk in and—" Mark Reynolds held up a document. "Judge Harrison, by order of the Judicial Conduct Board, you are officially being placed under investigation." Gasps filled the courtroom. The judge's jaw clenched. "This is a mistake," he muttered, looking around as if someone would come to his defense. But no one did. Pam took a step forward, her voice steady. "No, Your Honor, the mistake was thinking you were above the law." Judge Harrison's hands balled into fists. "You have no right—" Mark raised a hand. "Actually, we do. And considering the severity of these complaints, you are also being placed under immediate suspension." Two uniformed officers stepped forward. "Sir, we need you to come with us." The judge's face turned a deep shade of red. "This is absurd. I am the law here." But his protests meant nothing. The officers escorted him out of the courtroom, his angry shouts echoing down the hallway. Pam watched as the doors swung shut behind him. Then she turned back to face the courtroom, her expression calm. Justice had been served. As the heavy courtroom doors slammed shut behind Judge Harrison, the murmurs in the room grew louder. People exchanged stunned glances, some whispering to each other in disbelief. A sitting judge had just been removed, right in the middle of a case. That wasn't something anyone saw every day. Pam Bondi took a deep breath, regaining her composure. She had fought many legal battles, but this one felt personal. She wasn't just standing up for herself, she was standing up for the integrity of the entire judicial system. Mark Reynolds turned to her. "Ms. Bondi, I appreciate your courage in speaking out. If not for you, this misconduct might have gone unchecked for years." Pam nodded. "The courtroom isn't a place for personal bias, it's a place for justice. Someone had to say something." Just then, one of the reporters in the gallery stood up. "Ms. Bondi, will you be pressing further charges against Judge Harrison?" Pam glanced at the cameras now pointing directly at her. She chose her words carefully. "Right now, the priority is ensuring that every case he presided over is reviewed fairly. If further legal action is necessary, it will be pursued." More reporters fired off questions, but before Pam could respond, a court clerk stepped forward. "Ms. Bondi, the Chief Judge would like to see you in chambers." Pam's eyebrows raised slightly. The Chief Judge? This case was moving fast. She gave a small nod to the reporters and followed the clerk out of the courtroom. The hallways were buzzing with activity, court officials whispering, some glancing at her with admiration, others with curiosity. As she stepped into the Chief Judge's office, she found him waiting behind his large wooden desk, hands folded. "Ms. Bondi, take a seat," he said, his tone unreadable. She did as instructed, sitting upright. "I assume this is about Judge Harrison?" The Chief Judge nodded slowly. "Yes. And about what happens next?" Pam held his gaze. "I'm listening." He leaned forward. "What if I told you this case is bigger than just one corrupt judge?" Pam's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" she asked cautiously. The Chief Judge sighed, sliding a file across the desk. "Take a look. I think you just uncovered something much, much bigger than you realize." Pam opened the file, her eyes scanning the pages, and what she saw made her stomach turn. This was just the beginning. Pam's eyes darted across the pages, her pulse quickening with every line she read. The file contained internal court memos, financial records, and, most disturbingly, evidence of tampered case rulings. She looked up at the Chief Judge. "Are you telling me Judge Harrison was part of something bigger?" The Chief Judge nodded gravely. "We've suspected corruption within the judiciary for some time, but until now, we didn't have enough evidence to act." Pam clenched her jaw. The implications were staggering. If this file was accurate, it meant that Harrison wasn't just an arrogant judge, he was part of a network that had been manipulating cases for years. People could have been wrongfully convicted, criminals could have walked free. She exhaled sharply. "How deep does this go?" The Chief Judge hesitated before answering. "Deep enough that Harrison was just the tip of the iceberg. We believe there are more judges, prosecutors, and even law enforcement officials involved." Pam shut the file, gripping it tightly. "So what's the plan?" The chief judge leaned back in his chair. We need someone who can take this public. Someone with credibility. Someone with courage. He looked directly at her. We need you, Pam. Pam's mind raced. She had never shied away from a fight, but this wasn't just about one corrupt judge anymore. This was a war against a system that had been rotting from the inside. She straightened her shoulders. If we do this, we do it right. We gather airtight evidence. We expose every single person involved. No one walks free. A small smile formed on the chief judge's lips. That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. Pam stood, gripping the file. Then let's bring them all down. But just as she reached for the door handle, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, and her stomach dropped. Unknown number. A simple text message popped up. Back off, or you'll be next. Pam stared at the screen. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears. Someone knew, someone was watching. She took a slow breath, steadied herself, and made a decision. She wasn't backing down. This fight was only getting started. Pam tightened her grip on the phone, her mind racing. The threat was clear, but backing down wasn't an option. If anything, this only proved how deep the corruption ran. She turned to the chief judge, her face unreadable. They already know. He frowned. What do you mean? Pam slid the phone across his desk. He read the message, his expression darkening. Damn it, he muttered. That didn't take long. She crossed her arms. Which means we're on the right track. The chief judge leaned forward. This also means they're watching. We have to be careful. If these people are willing to threaten you, they won't hesitate to do worse. Pam exhaled, steadying herself. So what's next? We can't just sit on this. The chief judge nodded. We won't. But we have to be smart about it. He picked up his office phone and dialed a secure line. After a few moments, someone answered. It's me. We need a safe location and a task force assembled, immediately. Pam raised an eyebrow. Task force? The judge placed the receiver down. We're bringing in federal investigators. If this corruption is as widespread as we suspect, we need outside help. Before Pam could respond, the door to the office burst open. A court officer rushed in, his face pale. Sir, we have a situation. The chief judge's expression hardened. What kind of situation? The officer hesitated. It's Judge Harrison. He never made it to booking. Pam's stomach sank. What do you mean? The officer swallowed hard. The transport van was intercepted, the guards were found unconscious, and Harrison is gone. Pam exchanged a glance with the chief judge. This wasn't just about corruption anymore. Someone was pulling strings at the highest level. And now the most dangerous man in this case was on the loose. Pam clenched her fists. We need to move, now. But deep down, she knew this was about to get a whole lot worse. The weight of the situation pressed down on Pam like a storm cloud. Judge Harrison had vanished, and that meant only one thing. Whoever was behind this had power, resources, and a plan. Pam turned to the chief judge. We don't have time to wait for the feds. If they got to Harrison this fast, they'll be 2 steps ahead unless we act now. The chief judge nodded. Agreed. But we need to be strategic. If this goes all the way up the chain, we don't know who we can trust. Pam's mind was already racing. Who had access to the transport schedule? The court officer cleared his throat. Only a handful of people, the bailiffs, the transport team, and Judge Harrison himself. Pam narrowed her eyes. Then he knew. He knew they were coming for him. The chief judge rubbed his temple. Either they broke him out, or he planned his own escape. Pam wasn't sure which was worse. If he had been rescued, it meant the corrupt network was protecting their own. But if he had planned it, then Harrison had something even bigger in motion. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. You should have listened. Pam's blood ran cold. A second later, a follow-up message appeared. Check your car. Her breath hitched. We need to go, now. She turned on her heels and sprinted down the courthouse hallway, the chief judge and the officer close behind. Every step felt heavier, her heart pounding in her ears. They burst through the front doors and into the parking lot. Pam's car sat in its usual spot, except something was different. A small, blinking red light sat underneath the driver's side, her stomach twisted. Bomb squad, now! The officer barked orders into his radio, and within seconds, security personnel were clearing the area. Pam took a step back, watching as the flashing red light pulsed like a ticking clock. A warning, a message. The people she was up against weren't just corrupt, they were ruthless. Pam clenched her fists. They wanted her to be afraid, they wanted her to stop. But they had made a mistake, because now she was more determined than ever. This wasn't just about exposing corruption anymore. This was a war, and she was ready to fight. The tension in the air was suffocating. As the bomb squad worked swiftly to neutralize the threat, Pam stood still, her mind sharpening like a blade. This wasn't just intimidation, it was a declaration of war. Minutes later, the lead technician gave the all clear. It wasn't a live explosive, he said, just a tracker with a fake detonator. They wanted to scare you. Pam exhaled, her jaw tightening. Well, they failed. The chief judge stepped beside her. Pam, this is getting too dangerous. They won't stop. Pam turned to him, fire in her eyes. Neither will I. She pulled out her phone and made a call. Director Lewis? It's Pam Bondi. I need you to meet me in a secure location. We have evidence of high-level judicial corruption, and I'm ready to go public. The chief judge's eyes widened. You're going straight to the press? Pam nodded. If we keep this in the system, they'll bury it. We need to take this fight into the light. As she hung up, she noticed something across the street. A black SUV idling, its windows tinted. Someone was watching. She didn't flinch. Instead, she walked toward the vehicle, slow and steady. The SUV hesitated for a moment, then screeched away, disappearing into the city. Pam smirked. They were afraid. The truth was coming. The world was about to see just how deep the corruption ran. And no matter how powerful these people thought they were, justice was coming for them. And Pam Bondi was leading the charge.